Howdy, folks. Today we're diving into the art of seeing the unseen, how reflections can transform the way we view the world and our photography right after this. Welcome to Camera Shake, where we bring you the insider scoop on all things photography and videography, giving you a unique opportunity to stay ahead of the curve. And hey, if you haven't already, make sure you sign up to the Camera Shake mailing list over at www.camerashakepodcast.com. We've got some awesome stuff coming up soon, so make sure you get your name down on that list ASAP. Now, without further ado, let's give it up for today's special guest, Bruges-based photographer, visual storyteller, and creator of the stunning new photo book, Reflections of Bruges, Andy McSweeney. Andy, man, it's good to have you back on the show.
Oh, Kirsten, what a pleasure to be back. Thank you, man.
Yeah, it's good to see you. I mean, it's been 3 years or something since you were on the show last. Just to give us an update on what's been happening in your world.
Life has been pretty good, man. I mean, I guess, it's been about 3 years. So when we last talked, we were coming out of COVID. I'm still busy with my photo tour, which is the city tour and photo workshop. That survived COVID and has recovered nicely. So on the work end of things there, that's been doing well. I also rebooted the website for the tour and expanded from 1 page to 6 pages my portrait offerings. So that worked out real nice, thanks to some of the advice on the guests on your show. And that helped out to just expand and round out what I guess was sort of a bit of a gap in my photography, which was taking photos more often. So now people see me more visibly, and that's grown a lot. And I'm hitting a few new levels there that I'm really happy with. I have just been rolling along doing life. I got to India twice for the 5th and 6th time collectively with the wife. We did 3 weeks, then a month last year, and then this year for some overdue holiday. And for anyone jealous, it was our first holiday in 8 years, so that was kind of nice. I kept my sanity long enough to get my beach time in. Got to take photos of something beyond Bruges, which was just it was time for. So India's a favorite ground, and that place is tons of fun. And got my holidays in, went to Canada last July for my sister's wedding. It's just lovely to see her getting married. But if I get to go back to Montreal for a week on top of it and shoot the wedding to keep myself fresh, can't complain, my man. And now I'm on to the 3rd book. So that feels really good because I've been working on this one for a while. It's nice to have it at the graphic designer in the final stages of birthing.
Yeah, so it's by the time this podcast comes out, your book is most likely already available. And of course, I'm just prefacing it by saying all the links will be in the description. So, if anybody interested in having a bit of a snoop, just to make sure you go into the description, no matter whether you're listening on audio or, of course, whether you're watching this on YouTube, all the links will be there. But before we get into that, because it's a super interesting angle, because I've had I was fortunate enough to be allowed a little sneak preview into the book, and I have to say I found it super interesting. It's a really great concept, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But before we get into that, you're known for providing super interesting photo tours in Bruges. With everything that's been going on in the world, what effect has that had on tourism? I know the last time we spoke was just after the pandemic. Things were kind of looking up a little bit, I think. How are things?
Yeah, they were leveling out and people had COVID cash to blow. So actually it was one of the good times after that whole thing. But yeah, I suppose you're basically asking about the photography and the tourism side of things being so interrelated. Yeah, so I mentioned it earlier. It's a city tour photo workshop. There's the portrait side of things too, and that draws in a lot of tourists. So, I mean, we're basically in tourism land with this. The pandemic itself, obviously, was pretty brutal, but at the same time, I produced a book out of it, of the city center with no people. I also live in Belgium, which is a high tax but high social care country. So while you get a little bit hit by the tax man, we get subsidies throughout all of COVID, even into 2022. So I actually ended up saving a little cash, like many, where I couldn't go out and spend it. And I was getting, for first time in 10 years, a steady paycheck. So that was kind of nice. And then taking it to 22, well, basically, like I said, it started picking up again because everybody had their savings. They were wanting to go out. I certainly noticed a surge in things. And that was very, very nice. But, it comes and goes with tourism. I'd say 23 was pretty good also. I should also mention, I guess, pretty early on that my busy seasons, and this might make sense to photographers, is a little more on the spring and fall side of things than summer. So I don't actually get that much mass tourism, partly because of the concept, partly because of how I built it with pricing structure, whatever else. But I see the middle and the top end of tourism mostly. And then the budget end, they're usually treating themselves at least to an open tour, maybe a portrait or whatnot. And I mean, the top always has money, so you can't really say much about that. They might conserve a little bit in things like COVID, but that segment of the market has just been steady up until now. The main thing I've noticed is really over the last year, and we were talking a little bit about this before we went on air, just how, without bringing in the headaches of what's going on in the real world, probably why we listen to these shows is to tune out for a bit. I mean, basically world politics and economics and whatever else is going on this crazy little ball of blue will influence the economy, and tourism is something you're going to see pretty directly. So over the last year, basically with a couple of wars, a couple of controversial presidential choices, this, that, and the other, I have noticed that this year is sort of leveled off around the middle and certainly the budget end of things. And the cool thing is, I mean, and I find they're a little more communicative about this stuff as a community. I get to talk to other tour guides and tour companies. We're a pretty small city. We all try and connect in one way or another. And I'm a loud Canadian compared to a quiet Belgian, so they get to know me anyways. We all talk numbers. And I mean, basically, like some of the states have been seeing through Canada, not visiting as much through whatever's going on there. Globally, tourism is down 20%, and we've got that number. So, yeah, I mean, if you ask how's business, I'm still surviving. Where I'm not complaining. It's a low cost year while my cameras are holding together. My computer hasn't blown up. All that sort of math is nicely in check. But frankly, the numbers are down a little bit, and you do notice the flow of things just overall with especially hospitality, where I talk to a lot of people too. People just aren't spending that extra little bit. And for anyone thinking of opening a photo tour, don't forget, kind of like photography to an extent, we aren't a base expense in a lot of cases. In tourism, you got your room, you got your food, you got a little bit of transport or whatnot, or a lot of transport. But then something like a tour guide can become optional. And even a photographer nowadays, if you're half decent with the selfie stick and have no self-respect, well, then obviously you can make it work.
It's interesting because a friend of mine, Dave Williams, he runs a tour business in the Lofoten Islands, in Arctic Norway, and it was actually interesting to see that grow because he when he first went up there, his focus was on photo tours, because the Lofoten Islands is a very, photographically interesting area. It's very photogenic, beautiful landscapes, Northern Lights, of course, and, all that kind of stuff. So it's, at first glance, you think well, this is perfect. I mean, it's just such a playground for photographers, really.
I've got that in Bruges. I feel you. It's gorgeous here. Please get to
Well, exactly. I mean, Bruges is just such a stunning city. But of course, what Dave, I think, really realized over time was that for him, he needed to branch out. He needed to include other tours. So he does a number of different things. Food of the Lofotens. I think he does Viking story tours. He does basic, all sorts of different, kayaking tours, all sorts of stuff. And I think when he started doing that, his business started to do really well. And it's one of these examples. I think we've talked about this on this podcast many, many times. There are times when the niche down as much as you can philosophy stops working because there are other factors coming into it, like economic factors, like wars, like reduction in tourism and so on. Where all of a sudden you need to kind of take the opposite approach and actually branch out and diversify.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I try and do some of that on my tours, and I agree with you totally. So I'm not defending it in the very least, or there's a middle ground in a way to skip ahead a bit. Basically, on my tours, I mean, I market them, and realistically too, towards all photographers. You can come in with a smartphone, you can come in with your 10 grand medium format, bells, whistles, deluxe setup. So I think that opens up the market a bit. And actually, it's certainly helped for any of you taking notes for photo tours. If you do cater to those who are more casual in photography, you can help them a lot, and they're going to love you for that. So it's almost easier than with the experienced ones. But you're definitely right. I've over the years, because I've been doing this 13 years now, if somebody calls me up, especially it's not a huge city. I stick out a little bit as the Canadian amongst the Belgians, whatever else. My concept is a little more original compared to his street tours, whatnot. I will get calls from hotels who ask, can you do something that's very low key photography? And if they're just on their smartphones, that's no problem. Funnily enough, loads of people roll with it. I sometimes thought it would be a fight, but a lot of people go, well, actually, I do want slightly better photos. But if they say, look, can you just focus on the history for 3 hours, like a private tour for photos? I can, because now I've got the experience and I can offer that out. And I do offer it out. I've even gone to hotels. I'm happy to say on air, if anyone wants to drop by and do a history tour with me instead of photography, it's totally possible. So certainly that niching doesn't always work to your advantage, and you do have to have a couple of branches. The most important thing, I think, is just that for me, especially with ADHD, which I think a lot of photographers have, it's such a tool for this thing. You end up in the medium just from this, if nothing else. Oh, look, the corner of my eye and extra energy. Let's go film it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. But that means that I know from experience that I don't want to stretch myself too thin and have my attention span too spread out. So I'm happy to niche out and spread my niche into like 3 to 5 things, but I always make sure that they're around my orbit. And I don't know, just also with a lot of ADHD, and I think just people in general, when you get down to it, fundamental for happiness, you've got to be entertained and interested in it. I could do a history tour here, and I do, like I say, but it's not something I want to do 7 days a week. I don't mind even doing it like a couple times a week, but it's got to be mixed in with photography where I meet or help people who are just kind of stimulating me and keeping me fresh in it. And same with the portraits and so forth. But please, yeah, go.
Now you've run photo tours in Bruges for
Yeah,
12 years, I think you say. Um,
13, yeah.
or 13 years. And of course, in the process, you've gotten to know the city, intimately well. Has your photographic process, um, changed or developed or evolved over that time?
Oh, brother, it has been the greatest part of the job. That evolution is exactly what keeps me going and part of why I don't get into the kayak tours. I feel the heat of just getting better and better and better. Humbly, I hope I'm getting better. I feel like I'm getting better. My peers are saying I'm getting better. But now that I've been doing this 13 years and into photography for, well, I took a 7 year break to be a DJ, so that's not very photography minded. But I got into it in '96. Paid for my second roll of film, followed it out while I was traveling, went away, came back with it to it in 2006. But the tour has been the biggest thing to push me forward, especially for that ADHD, give me focus to like one particular place, one particular region. Also part of why I don't worry about other cities. And I'd want to get into them as much as I do Bruges. Like I'm on the press list at City Hall, so I can cover events and all that. And even just day-to-day things a little more intimately with purpose, with not poking out because you're just somebody walking in off the street. Uh, that's all pushed me forward as a photographer in one way or another, either in the social way where I get to know more people, I get more opportunities, I get to know more of the city because I keep looking at it beyond, whether it's suburbs, whether it's center, whether it's countryside. I just keep trying to push into that story long term in one way or another. But I also improve just from the sheer 10,000 hours of it all. I mean, when I'm on tour, I'm talking photography, I'm showing photos on my iPad that I've harvested out and talking about those, dissecting them, taking photos for those. So that's time on top of it. And then when I'm not on tour, I'm reading up on cameras of all the brands, all the industry news, anything, so that somebody asks me something, I have a high percentage chance of saying, I do know that and I can tell you. I don't make stuff up if I don't know it. I just say I just don't know. And maybe I'll like go to the phone if they really need to know it. But for me, it's just that long-term educating and doing, and especially the last few years, getting the portraits really off the ground. I mean, I've done so many proposals now, which becomes something that you also do your hours in.
But that's a really cool thing. That's a really cool thing, because I saw some of your proposal portraits, and I love the way that you bind that into the city. And this is the thing I'm sort of starting to learn about London, which is the city that I live at. Is that the more I get into the city and the more I photograph, the more I get to know that city, and and you've really taken it to that next step, which is using your knowledge of the city in order to create portraits for people who are getting, what's the word? Eloped? Is that the word?
Engaged.
Sorry, engaged.
Yeah, they might have loved to the minister after, screw the family, but yeah. I get them on the proposal.
Yeah. But it's a really interesting, and then the next sort of incarnation of that, the authoring a photo book is something. It's kind of like a natural, logical evolution of the whole thing.
That's the idea, my friend. I don't know if you had time to look at my first two books, but they're mostly landscape books.
Yes.
First one is 5 years into the tour, being in Bruges. It's bits of everything that I've seen, from landscapes to details. Second book was going to be the book we're going to talk about, but then lockdown happened. So I went through our tourist city historical center, took wide angles of everything wide open. And this is the evolution of that. This is also the book where I get to play more abstractly. And actually, I really take that to heart when you say I'm putting the city well into the proposals in whatever moments. I'm an environmental photographer, and it took me a while to figure that out. Environmental portrait photographer, exactly. So to me, like, working the city into the story, my base logic beyond what I want to do is that they're in Bruges. They want to see Bruges in the photo. I'm going to ask them, and they're going to tell me if they want just headshots or whatnot. So hearing that you like see the city in there, that touches me right there. Thank you very much. That's what I'm going for.
So let's talk about the new book. Just tell us about the concept behind it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I've been working on it I've been collecting photos on it for the last 10, 12 years, basically early on into the tour. And it's entirely water reflections of photos of the urban landscapes taken only in the water. So it's not a split shot where you get the building and you get the calm canal water. You actually just get that bottom half. And what I do to increase the clarity of the story I'm trying to tell is just flip them upside down so that they're right side up. It looks almost like a traditional landscape, except you realize pretty quickly that it's through the ripples in the water usually, that it's actually something in the water. And the end effect that I'm going for with it is to kind of step beyond the usual postcard thing, because I think that's the point of evolution that I've certainly reached with my urban landscapes and that side of my work with the photo tour and myself. But it's also, it's just a step beyond common sense and straight logic and the right side of the brain. We certainly use both sides of our brain in photography, which is a whole discussion in itself. You've had similar ones on the show, but this is really leaning into the left side where you let go of the reality of it all. If I've succeeded, you'll even forget it's a photo.
Hey, let me just jump in real quick to tell you about the amazing sponsor of this episode, Platypod. Platypod offers innovative camera support systems designed to unleash your creativity. With their stable, versatile, and portable solutions, you can capture stunning shots like never before. And I'm not just saying that. As the host of the Camera Shake podcast, I can personally vouch for Platypod's incredible products. They've become an integral part of the show. In fact, I'm surrounded by various Platypod products holding up lights, cameras, microphones, and so on. It's really helped to transform the way I make the show and the way I shoot at home, in the studio, and on location. But don't just take my word for it. Explore Platypod's website at www.platypod.com to discover their range of products, including the Platypod Extreme, Platypod tripod heads, and the brand new handle, of course. Make sure to follow Platypod on Instagram and Facebook at Platypod Tripods for exclusive updates, tips, and giveaways. By choosing Platypod, you're not only investing in your photography, but you're also supporting the Camera Shake Photography Podcast. Thanks again to Platypod, our amazing sponsor. Platypod, where innovation never sleeps.
At some point.
And some of those images look really quite, they look like paintings. I mean, what really fascinated me about it was that I always like it when there's a concept. To me, artistically, I find that extremely attractive. When you come up with a concept and then you basically execute and you create a body of work based on that concept. So the whole idea of, creating images that are actually water reflections, but because they're flipped around, they have this almost abstract personality to them.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to sort of think, you have to look twice to really understand what's going on. And I tell you, the thing that I really loved was the fact that, you go through all the seasons in it, and to see ice floating on the water or the leaves, or like autumnal leaves, so to say. It really has something. It's very, very pretty. How do you plan a project like that? I mean, you said you collected images over 10 years. Was that something you've had in your mind ever since the beginning? That at one point you're going to put a book together like this, or was it something that's sort of evolved?
Well, it was there from the beginning because it's not the newest idea in the world. And that should be said early on too. Taking photos in the water, flipping them around. It's a classic. It's probably been around since photography in one way or another. So it's not like I'm working with anything too conceptually new. The idea was there in the early days, and I had it while I was figuring myself out, especially 12, 13 years ago as a landscape photographer, starting up the tour. I'm a people photographer as my main strength, even though I can dibble dabble into the others. So a lot of the early years of the tour were just running around for myself, figuring out locations, figuring out how to shoot them, figuring out how to shoot them better after that, figuring out how it was better, why it was better, whatnot. But that was part of what I was harvesting with the water reflections. And then I realized it's such a great idea. It's got to be done at some point. I have a couple ideas that I know won't quite make books. I think, for example, Bikes of Bruges, we can leave that out. Somebody's done it in one way or another. And unless I hit a good concept for it, a good spin, I'm not going to worry about it. But the reflections always grabbed me. So I figured it would be something down the line to do. And actually, after I put out my first book, after 5 years of doing the tour 3 years of doing the tour in 2015, then I figured that would be the next book. And I started gearing myself a little more towards that, going out specifically taking sessions of the water reflections. I mean, it's a lost expression to some, but the best landscape photographer is the one who lives there. So the fact that I got 5 minutes away from town on my bike, and I can just roll in on a gorgeous morning when the light's 5 minutes away from really popping out on the scene. I know it inside out because it's my job in the tour, what that location is going to do at that time of year. It's just a matter of really popping around and then dedicating a little time to it and then keeping it on my list one way or another. And I guess I should have put in the pitch. You did mention how it is 4 seasons. So that also shows part of the long-term work of it. I mean, I saw as soon as winter came around and the ice popped up and then broke and you could see the buildings and everything, that this went way beyond fall. Originally, fall was my main intention when I just started seeing the whole project of it all. I liked how the leaves went. And then I think any creative project, it just starts growing and evolving from there. The central idea was always there. Another thing I didn't give in the pitch, and you haven't mentioned it either, is, and maybe fair enough, it might suck, but I've put words directly on the pages next to and sometimes even in the photos. No fancy Photoshop, actually a real simple typewriter type. I don't want it to dominate, but I want it to be present. And the idea of the words just came, I'd say, within the last 5 years when I knew when the second book went out that I'd wait a bit. I figured, well, now I guess I got time to really start pouring that word thought that I was playing around with on social media or just for myself one way or another. Yeah.
And it's really interesting. I mean, it's a lot of photos. How many photos are in the book?
It's 175 pages altogether, and it is just shy of 145 photos. I think that's including my biopic by the amazing Martin Hoogman, by the way.
Yeah, it's a great shot.
Given,
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I find it really fascinating because again, it's really something that requires a lot of planning. Did you at some point get to the point where he goes like, where you went, I don't have enough images of winter, so I have to wait around for the next winter to come and specifically go out and shoot some more of those specific images.
that was part of the long-term process, was getting my harvest afterwards. And then basically going, what do we have here? And does it start making a bit of a chain of a story in one way or the other? I'd learned from my last two books, it doesn't always have to be shot on the same day and have to look exactly the same. Some people run a filter through their book just so it's all like faded yellow, and I just don't get it. You're using this filter instead of storytelling. But yeah, a couple of times I'd go, okay, I'm going to have to wait till next winter to get that extra piece I wanted. The hardest thing really in the end, or not the hardest thing, that's a thing on its own, but I guess what made it interesting, and maybe part of the challenge, because it's not the most organized way, my central philosophy is to keep things fairly loose and not rush it in cases like this. Client job, you're doing a little bit of looseness, but you got a lot of structure and you got an end date. This is an arty farty book to a larger extent, even more than a landscape kind of wandering through medieval Bruges thing. So it should take its time and just sort of be fun, be interesting, make the song for myself more than the client or the band, or for the audience, that kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Oh,
Does that?
absolutely, absolutely. What was the thing that drew you specifically to reflections? Was it the abstraction of it, or what was it?
Yeah, that's a great question, man. It's well, I guess I'm just a little bit crazy, mentally unstable, so I just see these blurs everywhere, and I saw them in the water, figured that was the way to go.
It's,
I'm sorry.
it's super interesting, when you look at some of the images, because of course sometimes you've got floating leaves in there, or like or broken
Yeah,
ice, for example,
yeah,
or like the occasional swan. You look and you gotta
yeah,
go. There's one image I'm looking at, and think like, why is there a swan? What? And then you realize, oh yeah, of course, because it's water. Duh. Um,
yeah.
but there is something. It does make you sort of think when you look at an image. It's not just something that you glance at and then you carry on this, um, because there's
Yeah,
distortion, there's abstraction going on.
yeah.
You really have to look a lot more closely. Which again, I find that's what photographs should be.
That's what I was going to say. I'm doing my job as a photographer. I'm catching your eye, and then I've won that 2 seconds where I've gotten your attention. I've put a story in your brain, and you're going, I get it, so I like it, so I'll follow it. Or I don't get it, but I'm interested, so I'll follow it. And then I'm trying to fill that out with time and class, hopefully. That was one of the joys of taking my time. I'd go back to locations and go, okay, this was fine the first time, but hey, maybe I got a higher end camera so I can really bring up the pixel peeping on it, or higher contrast, whatever else. But it oh Jesus, it fell out of my brain. I totally blanked there right at the end of the sentence, halfway through even.
How do you
Sorry.
how do you decide when a reflection image works or not? What are
Yes.
the sort of elements that make you say, right, that is it, that works?
Yeah. Yeah, man, it resonates. It's like when I go do a portrait shoot and I just see that little moment where the couple are looking at each other extra nice, or even on a technical level, their heads are turned the right way. I see that I'm getting to the borders of a bridge, or that I fit everything in right. That's when it really resonates, just like it would any other shoot. And as far as choosing out stuff, I mean, like I said, that's the benefit of time, and I don't know. It's such a stunning city. I'm really spoiled for choices. I think the biggest choice I really had to make consciously was to limit myself. And at some points, even because, great art is never finished, it's abandoned. I'm not saying this is great art, but it's art. So at one point, I got to let it go. I could spend another 5 years getting the entire area of town. Instead, I focused on the central area and let it go a couple times if one or two locations popped up once or twice. It actually, I found, if you really look deep into it, because I was putting it together for about 6 months before handing it off to the graphics guy. There's a lot of connections between pages and chapters and stuff. like birds starting off one of the season chapters and then finishing with boats. That's like the simplest level of it.
Yeah.
So some of those choices actually ended up being influenced by other things in the book, either not wanting to overdo a location or maybe revisiting it in the like every second chapter kind of thing. Just scurrying around a little bit. I'm tickling with the left side of my brain and I'm trying to get to the left side of your brain. So the rules are a lot more flexible.
Yeah, and I want to talk a little bit about the creative process. So did you go out specifically to create some images of, or did you go out specifically to find some reflections, or were they things that surprised you?
Mostly going out past that initial first wave of figuring myself out, figuring out the trick, gathering a few and going, okay, we got something here. But also just letting myself be surprised. Even from the earliest days of getting into photography, I always carried a camera with me. I used to have an Olympus XA. It's on the shelf upstairs. Tiny little 35 millimeter film, 35 millimeter lens, 2.8 manual focus, whatever you need for those days in the basics. But it really is the camera you have with you. And when I'm going to a press moment or coming back from a tour and I see a gorgeous reflection, maybe on a spot I've seen, but maybe something totally new, that's where having at least a decent camera comes in. And, it's part of the job to carry it. So I carry more than your cheapest kit lens and low end body from 20 years ago.
I always wonder how that works. When you put a photo book together, do you basically do you go out and collect images basically, over time? You just put them in a folder, in a bin, and then at
Yep.
some point you go, okay, well, I'm going to look through all of that material and filter out the stuff that I think makes the grade, so to say. Or is it a thing where you go out specifically for a shoot, you come back and you specifically find the hero image of that day? How much? What I'm trying to say is like how much.
Intent, maybe?
Yeah, how much intent, how much front-loaded effort is there when you put a book together? Or is it really just, a matter of collecting loads and loads of stuff and then eventually just sifting through all of the material that you've already shot?
That's a great question, and that comes down to a lot of the fundamentals of putting together a batch images into a story. I mean, it's going to be different for everyone's process. Certainly think you have to have some planning and structure in at least a basic way. And if I can do it with ADHD, certainly everyone else can. Uh, Basically, my process, as I think I mentioned, is to be on the loose. In fact, my old business card, I just changed it now, but it said photographer on the loose because my process is getting lots of practice in and then basically as much as possible, keeping everything else loose, especially on the day. So with the book itself, when it's out there, that comes down to the collecting, like you heard. So mostly just going out there, keeping loose while I'm out there, and then when I'm not, just looking out. But when it comes down to making the book, when I'm in this case, I was just collecting images, just putting stuff away into a huge folder, dividing them into seasons and Lightroom catalogs. And then at a certain point, when you're at the end, you look at everything, or along the way, actually, in this amount of time, look along the way and say, okay, is this what I'm wanting? And what do I see here? When 6 months ago, I started going, okay, now it's time to compile this thing so we have it out for the Christmas rush. Then I started going through and first and foremost, instead of looking for the story that connected them all first, I looked for my favorite images. Just what I thought really stood out on the technical, emotional, creative level. Whether it was the texture of the leaves, whether it was the way the building was gorgeous and came together in the water, whatever it was, just pick out your killers. Bam, 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 bam. And then go through again. And I'm using the color coding on Lightroom there. So just pressing 7 for the color to pop in. Then I go through again and I grab all the B sides with a different color. Bam, 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 bam. Now I've got the base material to work with. The idea was permeating long enough that, okay, what can I know I'm going to be doing a Four Seasons thing and it's going to be mostly the city center. So I look through those again with that mindset and see what I can start building. In this case, I had the seasons to kind of already build the chapter structure. So that was great and fantastic. And I also, like I said, a few years ago, decided words were going to be no bad thing for this. It was something I already played with in the back of my second book where I added some words to the locations. But this one I knew I wanted to screw around a bit, and especially since it basically tickles the left brain so hard, it only makes sense that if I'm going to screw around with words, it might as well be this kind of book. So then basically you take all these little things that you thought in the arty farty way, if you're going to be doing an arty farty book, write them down on bits of paper. Then maybe go through your old socials if you've done that a few times with arty farty words, harvest some of that out, gather, 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 gather. And then you start, well, for me at least, at that point, I start seeing a structure and basic logic to how things are going to work. To skip back to my second book really briefly, I collected all these photos of the city center in lockdown, basically this historical touristy area with no tourists and like loads of gorgeous spring weather. So opened it wide up, collected images, also went back, got all my details and bits and pieces. Saw somebody actually, I didn't, somebody else did a book exactly on details, so I knew I was on the right track. That came out later, but it's nice to see in retrospect. And then I realized for the second book, I could actually build it as a city tour where you start at one location, go to the next location, and they're all geographically connected. So that's the kind of structure that the second book had. And when it came to the third book, I had all this material to play and screw around with, including the fact that since it's a creative book in the more heavy way, you can let a lot go as far as structure and it's art, so the rules are minimal, but whatever we call rules, those can especially be ignored and pushed away. In this case, yeah.
How did you put the whole structure together? Did you do that on a computer or did you print them out? Because I'm often thinking if I was to put together a photo book, I think for my brain it would probably work quite well to just print out all the images, even if they're just rough prints, and then lay them out on the floor, so that I can mix and match and move them around and see what works with what. How did you go through that process?
I did a bit of that. Especially with the photo tour, you get a couple free photos at the end of the tour. Private tour, you get bigger photos. So I'm good friends with the printer and I'm doing regular runs. I did print out a bunch as time went, partly as my like analog favorites folder where I just put them in the stack, knowing those are the very top. But Adobe is going to love me for this. I built the whole book in Lightroom module, the book module, and now I'm handing it off to a graphic designer. The paper thing is great, and because you can like physically touch it, which I'm old enough to remember was the only option. It was great. I still enjoy that side of things. So you can move things around, but at the same time, I find I'm just in the age bracket where I was introduced to computers early, so I've got a lot of digital in me, and I like being able to quickly edit stuff, especially with words. I don't want to have to like scratch it out, write the new thing, maybe grab a new paper. I just want to go in, type it, and I get the extra bonus, especially as a visual person with ADHD and patience sometimes of seeing it directly as it should look. So I just cracked open the book module, made a huge folder, and started putting them together. And then hand it off to my graphic designer so everything's right for proper book printing, PDF, all that sort of stuff.
When he came up with the words that you associated with the images, was that something that was sort of a result of looking at the whole structure and sort of telling the story across all of the pages, or was it something where you looked at these two images, let's say, or this 2-page spread, and went, okay, well, on this page these words would work?
The latter more than anything else, and then the former. I'd look at, it's the same with the pages and how they're going to lay out like photos in order. You basically look at them individually, and then you look at what's surrounding them. So I'd look at the photo, I'd look at the word, I'd think of the stack of words I had in my brain and go, that goes well there. Or I'd look at the image and think, what does it actually inspire in me? And that ended up being the process more often than not, especially now that I talk about it. You look at the image, you let your brain drift, and it starts coming to you, I think, if you're nuts enough like me.
Yeah, and I think
let yourself go and have some fun with it, basically.
Yeah, and I guess once you have once you have a sort of final version, albeit just a draft at that point,
The first draft, yeah,
yeah, the
first
first
real
draft,
draft.
you could then basically look through it, I guess,
Yeah.
and then just see, oh, this makes sense or this doesn't make sense. We have to refine this. How many drafts did you have to go through to end up at the final version?
3 real drafts until I got to the final end of things. The first one was just laying it out as I felt it in my brain and just instinct. Working in first with the photos, if anyone's curious, laying out the photos, double page spread mindset, boom, 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 boom. Then going through, dropping in words one way or another. Then walk away for a week, breathe, live life, walk your dog, make love to your wife, have a fantastic time, smell the fresh air, and then come back to it and then look at it and go, okay, what's going on now? Then you can allow yourself to look at it like 100 times if you want to. I basically do it as a ramp of viewability where I start with like a couple of views a day. And then by the end of the week, I'm up to 4 or 5. And then the next week, I'm looking at it like 10 times over in the day, one way or another. I mean, we're in device land with screens and everything, so it's not a challenge. Then things start clicking into mind. So you grab your sessions of time and then start working it around to what you see. And then you step away for a week. You walk your dog, you make love to your wife, you go and smell the fresh air, you do all that other stuff. And then you take a look at it and the process repeats itself. By the third draft, I had pretty much everything I wanted. And it was mostly, this is where, like you say, do I have enough photos of winter? You're filling in gaps and trying to make it all flow. I mean, one of the key words in the book is flow. I don't want it to be pretentious, arty farty stuff, but there is tickling into like the flow of the universe stuff. So the word flow gets capital, especially with the water side. And yeah, I mean, just trying to get that flow going. You just keep chiseling at it. Might be 3 little words, might be 5 pages rolling around to another area. I realized that spring had a lot of like white spots in the water just from all the plants exploding and everything. So I ended up reordering a fair bit of spring so that I could try to, with the material I have, like have that unfold over the second half of the chapter. And sometimes you reach some real head shakers or just like points of frustration where you really love how the pages are laying out. That was my favorite, messing around with page order. But then you realize it just isn't going to work because that image is later in the book, or it's going to be 2 times, 5 times in the book if you're not careful. So you end up messing around and like having to compromise stuff, or even throw out one of your very favorite images just to get that flow going as you hit that 3rd and 4th draft. And just to finish that off, 4th draft is just really fine tooth comb. You are not walking your dog. You are not making love to your wife. The only air is coming in from the outside. But then you nail it down and then you can hand it off to the graphic designer. After you do a final file, of course.
And this is your 3rd book.
Yeah.
Does the process become easier, or are there lessons you've learned from the first 2 books that allow you to simplify the process, or what have you learned over the course of 3 books?
That's a really good question. That's a fantastic question, man. I mean, it's I kicked off with me talking about how 12 years has helped me become a better photographer. I'd say preparation is the first thing that I learned out of it. Even now with the 3rd book and taking this long and having it in my mind, there are still little gaps that I would have liked to have done more extensively. There's, I guess, just you also get some confidence going. It's like after your first shoot, your first 10 shoots, your first 50 shoots, whatever that number is, you start getting a little more confident about it. It's received well. You're selling your copies. Everyone, you're getting that outside validation. If you've done it well, more importantly, you're getting the inside validation. Like, I wouldn't put this book out this year if I didn't love it. It had to be 100%. I had to be 100% happy with it. I took it as far as basically all I'd have to do. The only thing I could do to improve it is wait another 5 years and keep collecting images and keep screwing with it. But when I'm happy with it, when they're happy with it, that gives me confidence. So that starts like permeating into the next book. I think also you just get an understanding of like the commitment involved and the work involved. You sit down and you know you're not going to be there for 20 minutes. You're going to be there for 4 hours messing around with something or editing a photo or digging around a folder for something that can fit in between two photos or whatnot. So I think it just sets a lot of your expectations a lot more appropriately. And then just on the last side, uh, just the little things like when I did for my second book, a Dutch translation of part of it, because I mean, that's language or Flemish more accurately. But I realized in the first book, I didn't do a Flemish translation. So I learned that for the second book. What I didn't learn on the second book was make absolutely sure you've got your final translation in there instead of the drier one that was put out just before. So you look out for little things and you get a little more paranoid in the right ways of like, did I actually get that last little detail right? But I, if anything, it's also just taught me to have a little more fun with it and not take it too seriously, even though I did have fun with the first two books. You got to remember it's art. It could sink or it could swim overnight. I only did 100 copies of my second book as a limited run, 30 by 30 centimeters, so bigger, less of them. It took me a while to sell those 100, even with people with their COVID cash and whatnot. You just, you realize like I might as well just have fun with this first and foremost. And I think I really let myself get into that this book, the abstract thing.
How does I mean, how does publishing a book like this, how does that work? Are you self-publishing it? Are you working with a publisher? What's the what's this sort of the system, or how does it work?
Also a good question because people should be aware of this if they're not. I self-publish, so I pay the cost of everything going out, but I get everything that comes in minus a few bookshops or whatnot that get the discounts. I'm happy to share the numbers with you. I mean, your average bookshop will take 30%, which they got the shop, they're pushing it out for you. Fine, fair enough. I don't do anything on Amazon, but I do sell PDFs. So that's also something that can drive through a few sales. And also, I think when I did the postmortem on the second book sales, part of why it didn't sell as much is that people are more used to screens, and book sales, just if you look at the numbers, are going down in a lot of ways physically. So the PDFs are a venue self-publishing. Physical books are a venue self-publishing. You look around and you can get some really good prices for things. So when you price it appropriately and make a product that people are going to love, you hope, I mean, or at least feel good value on, 175 pages, full color, loads of photos, blah, blah, blah. That kind of thing you can make a profit line on compared to what usually happens in the book publisher model, which is, and I'm speaking roughly, and this will vary from bits of the industry to others, but either they might give you an advance and then take 80% of the book. You'll get 20% of whatever's left. Having said that, they're going to push it all over the place, hopefully, and you're going to get loads of exposure, this, that, and the other. Or they're going to make you pay $3 to $5 to do a publishing run up front, and then they're still going to take 60 to 80%, which to me is ridiculous math and makes absolutely no sense. The only thing that makes sense to me with a publisher is basically where you get back to the point that a lot of photographers have mentioned as part of book world, where it ends up becoming publicity or vanity, where you're getting the word out, you're becoming a big author. Hey, look, he signed a Random House. He must be a real photographer, so credibility comes with it. And then you start going up the chain, and then you do start through quantity making your money and getting your recognition and whatever else. That can also influence what kind of books you're making, which is something that I find kind of interesting as a side thing. But I kind of prefer the self-published model, especially in the day and age of the internet, especially with the photo tour that's been going 13 years and has a mailing list that ain't tiny of people who've had the experience with the photographer, have been in the city that it's been in, and all the other things that kind of connect people towards the sale a little more. As well as, thankfully, and I so appreciate them at every step, the city of Bruges supports me in one way or another. The museum will usually buy a few books. The second book I got hosted at City Hall by the mayor and the culture minister, who I'd gotten to know doing the press stuff, to show off and launch the second book. The press will definitely, once I let them know, write an article or cover the launch over at the record shop or whatever else. So when it comes to the self-published versus going with a big house, I can see the logic of the house. And if you get your quantity up, then you could be swimming in money. You could be the next Stephen King of photography. But we're just talking money here, never mind like potential reach or whatnot. But I'd rather just self-publish and keep it to my little ecosystem. In fact, just to throw one more little thought in there, I'm sure it's been talked about on your show, the theory of you don't need 1 million fans. You need 1,000 good fans. You get people who care about your work, and you don't have to go this big publishing route. You just sell straight to them.
Yeah, and of course the other thing is control. I think
Yeah.
self-publishing as a principle, it's amazing.
Yeah.
That we can even do that nowadays. By comparison, and of course you can argue that even a podcast like this, in a sense, is a self-published. What used to be a radio show, I suppose. Or
Yeah.
So self-publishing gives you a lot of control over what you do, because you can literally, there's no censorship, and you can just basically literally do whatever you want.
Yeah.
I assume. And there's no publisher telling you you can or you can't do that. Is it in the book world? Is it comparable to the music industry? Because when I was in the music industry,
so
you get you get advance from a record company,
Yeah.
and then you only the first thing would be, although you'd get a percentage on sales, but you wouldn't get any money until that advance is paid back. So although and it's very often, of course, this is the thing with bands' first albums. This is the reason why so many bands, for instance, never bring out a second album, is because they make such a massive loss on the first album that the record company just goes, well, this isn't worth it, and they end up with sometimes incredible debts,
Yeah. It's a business, and it's not for the artist, definitely. And photography parallels music in so many ways, from how your brain reacts to how the industry works. When you talk about the book side of things, it's the same business model fundamentally. And I'm sure there are book publishers who look at photographers and try and get a 360 deal where they can tie into every little bit of their job in one way or another.
Yeah.
If they could, they would do it.
Yeah, and that's
it's business. That's what it is, and I'm not dissing them for it, but that's something as a creative you have to take into mind if you're going to sign up with a publisher.
Yeah,
including, like you said, about like the control. I can make an arty-farty book and make it however I want. I can put swear words up and down the top and bottom. Nobody has to buy it, but I've at least made what I want, how I want, in the way I want.
Yeah, I mean, that's for me. When the 360 deal became basically the norm, that's to me was designed to eject myself from the music industry at that point.
Yeah,
I was like, okay, but no, because of course when you're self-publishing, then you also have to take care of all the promotion of it. Was how easy or difficult is it to get all of these ducks in a row? Like, how do you put a promotional strategy together for a self-published book?
Yeah. Oh, and you want me to answer that?
That's the question.
I thought you were going to tell me. No. It's any photographer who doesn't realize at least half of their job is marketing may not make it as a professional, is all I'm going to say. So if you're going to do a book, it's all down to marketing in one way or another. You're fighting an algorithm, you're fighting AI, but basically you have social media at your disposal. Posts are going to certainly be coming out, not only showing the book, but the photos regularly with a link in the bio to picking up a book, a PDF, whatever. Then when, well, I guess it sort of circles back to the press. You contact all your press, see if you can get some real world publicity, which can actually work out quite well, especially when you think most of the people who look at traditional media are people over 50 who have loads of disposable income because the kids are grown up and they're out of their face. They're going to have 40 euros for a book. So getting to them is, you don't need 10,000 followers on Instagram, and that might even work against you in their case. But then, it just comes down to a little bit of creativity and ideas. I'm still figuring out a few of them myself. I am thinking of doing a special run of postcards because, I don't have one with me, but my photo tour, I do postcard flyers. So I give them away left, right, and center. About 50,000 a year of my babies go out through the hotel every year. Yeah. So I've thought of maybe doing a run of postcards that I could give around to the hotels who are like business colleagues and all that sort of thing, to press, to magazines, whatever, with a mailer. Some of that old world stuff I think still has a lot of validity, if not a little more in the age of digital, because it's actually real and not just staring at you on the screen. But then it's just basically being creative and doing the time, hitting social media over and over again. I'm going to also on my YouTube channel, which I'm sure you will link in the description. If not, they'll see it on my website. I'm going to do a couple talks about the book as well as show how I put together the book. Some of the stuff you've been asking me. In fact, you are part of how I get the book out there, even though I know it's photographers who won't buy a book.
Well, you never know. You never know. It's an interesting concept. I mean, the thing is, I've always been fascinated by the whole concept of putting a book together, because it's in many ways it's so similar to the world that I'm used to, as in like the music industry, and
Yeah,
again, the most likely lots of parallels between publishing an album and publishing a book in many ways, and yet of
very
course they have
simple.
the unique difficulties, or um,
Yeah. And you're telling a story, brother.
yeah, exactly. You're telling a story, just like you do musically on an
Yeah.
album.
Have you never put together a book? Not even a short one, just for yourself digitally?
No. Well, I mean, I've put together like photo books for a client, but not, nothing.
Okay.
No, I mean, the thing that I have been thinking about, is to create like almost like a coffee table book of some of the, the three heads in a row images that I shoot, like the quirky portraits.
Yeah.
Um, there's an idea that's been floating around my head for a little while, but I might do that one time at some point in the future when I really don't have anything else to do. you know,
You know,
we put,
the book can also be good therapy. It's a way of like
yes,
taking and putting together all these disparate ideas into something with like a whole collective side of things. A large part of the book, and also while like going on the loose as much as possible, do your prep so you can be on the loose, is that's where you start hitting inner meditation.
I was going to ask you
The
exactly that. I was going to ask you exactly that. Yeah.
yeah. Oh, feel free. What are you thinking there?
Well, I know. I was going to ask you whether putting this project together, creating the imagery for it, putting the layout together, whether that is actually a form of meditation for you.
I think it is, and I think it is for a lot of people with art therapy. It's not photography, painting, whatever else. I mean, the title of the book is Reflections of Flow, but the subtitle, which I've learned from the first book was a fun thing to play with, is meditation in and around the Bruges canals, because it actually was a meditation. When I go out in sessions, purposely, I know I had my intent going, so that helped like focus my mind, helped just gather my forces. Even just a little exercise of stretching out 5 minutes before you race around town on the bike, that gives me a little focus, and I felt the meditation side of things. uh Being out there and just sitting on the quiet little canals that we have through the majority of our city. I'm going to remind the whole world that Bruges isn't just a tourist trap. We have like 2/3 of our city that's gorgeous, quiet, and actually the most beautiful thing because it's tiny little medieval streets. That sort of thing, when you're surrounded by that, especially if you work in tourism, is a meditation on peace and quiet. Discovering new bits of the city, because of course I was going out and looking for stuff. Uh, in one way or another, and just learning from the experiences of it. You asked me what I learned before, from the previous books, or how I was out collecting images. I realized for this book, I had to run around at the end and get the end of summer. I didn't quite have the green moss that pops up towards the back of the book. It's blue algae by name, but it's green as far as looking at it. I realized that had come into the water over the last couple of years a lot more aggressively. And while the city's treating it with this fancy technology, it's become part of the thing. And I had to work that into the book. So I had to go out and do some like direct meditation, not to like abuse the word, but where you just clear your mind and go, okay, I'm going out there and I'm doing this thing and I'm living in the now.
Yeah.
So Yeah, meditation was I felt worth putting in the title. I felt it so deep. And water's so relaxing. It's my
Yeah.
element too.
But
So,
that's
yeah.
exactly it. That's exactly what I was thinking. Now, I mean, obviously, you've built up sort of a solid reputation when it comes to photographing Bruges is concerned.
Hmm.
Across 3 books. And have you ever thought about expanding into another city?
I've thought about it, but it kind of goes back to the whole keeping focus side of things and playing off my strengths. I think I think on a few levels. I mean, I have done a couple of photo tours and elements of a workshop out in Ghent and Brussels. I also know Antwerp quite well. So if somebody called me up and booked me for a private tour, paid the travel, I'm sure I could keep them busy for 3 hours without boring them. That side of things I have thought of. On the other side of things, though, I do believe playing off the strengths is important. I've been living 23 years in Belgium, but I've mainly been living 23 years in Bruges. And because I'm married to a local, integrated especially with local life, spending the majority of my time here, making friends here, having some of her family or my family over here, all that I think adds an authenticity, which is part of what works really well for, if we're just talking the business of it, the brand, the product itself. It has an authenticity that I think especially nowadays people are looking for. I know in tourism, experiences are the big word more than just doing a tour. But I also love it here, man, and there's plenty to do. And if I also expand too big, this is where you got to start looking at life beyond the basics of things. The way Belgium is built right now, I have a very low tax rate and a lot of deductibles. I get 50% back on all my gear and everything within 3 years, and I pay very, very little tax compared to some of the high earners. We're a pretty socialist country, so you pay lots of tax in this place, even though you get a lot of benefits. If I go over a certain amount, basically I'll have to work 3 times as much to get the exact same money. So that makes sense if I really want to grow towards 5 times as big and making double the money or triple the money. But it's not my biggest ambition in life to have a Mercedes or live in a huge mansion. I want to travel more and get more holidays in. I mean, money was part of why we didn't have holidays for 8 years till last year. But pick your priorities in life. I mean, I got a great, amazing woman that I live in Bruges for. I got a dream job on multiple ends of it. I get to connect with a community that's pretty awesome. I mean, the Belgians are give and take people. That's what they take from the Dutch. So even when we disagree, as long as we're not being idiots and assholes to each other, it's fine. And we can get along with our day and even share a beer. That and just not overcomplicating my life. It, that turns off any appeal to expand into other cities. The only thing that interests me really is getting workshops going where a couple times a year we go off to places or people come to me for like a 3-4 day session.
Yeah.
That floats my boat more than expanding into Ghent, Brussels, Antwerp, or coming over to London and doing a thing once a month. Although we'd be more likely to do once a month than go to Brussels.
Well, London is fun, man. London is fun. It's my wife and I we've just actually spent last night. We spent a whole evening planning our next little road trip.
And you coming to Bruges? Good.
Well, so actually, what we're actually doing is we're trying to we love Scandinavia, and that whole the whole Hanseatic area. We were playing with different options. One was to drive from here to to the Netherlands and then to Hamburg, and then to Copenhagen and over to Sweden, and then to stay on the Swedish west coast, and then come back possibly by ferry or something like that. But in the process, you come across like lots of cities, like Lübeck, for example, or Bremen in Germany, Hamburg, and you realize like there's so many similarities really in architecture and in style. That whole coastline is incredibly beautiful, and extremely photographic. Because the way we had to plan it, right, was we wanted to plan it in a way that it had benefits for both of us. Now, obviously, I like taking pictures. My wife, she's not a photographer. That's not her main concern. She's
Likewise.
yeah. She likes to relax.
So.
yeah, exactly. She likes to relax and chill out, and like, she likes the occasional spa day and things like that. And so it was important, to build a route that had benefits for both of us.
Yeah.
Where we'd go to places where there's stuff to photograph, but at the same time also there are things that are attractive to her, like art museums, for example.
Totally. Totally.
You know,
That's how she'll put up with you another couple decades. Totally, man. Buy her flowers, chocolates, and let her pick some spots. Yeah.
exactly, yeah, exactly. That's it. So yeah, it's an interesting. It's a very very pretty part of the planet for sure, and
Mm.
you know, um, and obviously, you're. It's one of these things. You want to promote those sort of areas as far as tourism is
Yeah.
concerned, but then at the same time, I don't know. I found this with the Lofoten Islands.
Oh, you're talking about over tourism, are you?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
this thing where you think like, oh my God, the world must know about this place because it's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah.
At the same time, then friends of mine came back the other day and they were like, oh wow, it was incredible. It's like so much tourism. It was unbelievable. Then you kind of go, oh, maybe we shouldn't tell the world about this place. Maybe it should be our secret.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. That's something to consider, man. That's, that's one of the reasons I stopped offering the Central City tour, the Essential tour, as an open tour. I wanted to keep the numbers down. I mean, I only take 4 a tour. It's not like I'm bringing in a group of 20, unless they're a camera club or whatnot. But I've realized like slow tourism, not having over tourism is a very good thing. Luckily, Bruges has agreed with that from the beginning. Actually, I've always had chats with them, and they've always been on the line that yeah, we don't want too much tourism. The city charter post-war had one little line added to it that said make sure this doesn't take over. So like boats can only go to certain areas. There's not going to be a bus port on the quieter side where the windmills are, for example. But it's something major. It's something major that is I've been watching directly with the tour and through my travels before. It's something we have to be careful of. Not only, I mean, everybody should be welcome everywhere, and that's the attitude Bruges is taking. It's not like we're cutting off the cruises and telling the huge buses you can't come by no more. But we've already started restricting the cruise ships from 6 a day to 2 a day. And already 20 years ago, when they started letting cruise ships in, they didn't build a whole new canal that gets into Bruges like it does Venice. You have to do a 20-minute drive. So it's contained a little bit. Basically then we've woken up to that, and we only have a third of the city that's taken over with it, but we want to make sure we don't screw even that up. And then I think on the individual level, I think like you were getting towards, we got to be careful what we're telling and sharing as photographers, as travelers. I mean, I know a corner of India, the one that we go to regularly. I'm not going to say its name on the broadcast, and I would put off putting a book on it simply because, if nothing else, selfishly, that's my little corner of paradise, and I don't want huge buses showing up there.
Yeah, because you hear about this occasionally. For instance, there were demonstrations in Spain against mass tourism recently. Venice has introduced a special tourist tax, and and things like that. I mean, even here in the UK, this a whole bunch of cities like Oxford, I think, so Oxford, I think it was Oxford,
probably Bath also.
Exactly, yeah, so it's over tourism is a concern for some places for sure.
Yeah, totally. In fact, that shows that tourists can screw things up. It's not Bath, it's Bath.
Yes, very correct.
Thank you. I could feel a slap coming from the English Channel if I didn't.
It's also it's not Leicester Square.
Yeah. Edinburgh.
Yeah, well, exactly. So that's the thing. So what you got coming up next? Are you already thinking about the next project?
I am, man. That's another thing from building up into the third book. You already start looking towards the fifth, sixth, seventh book. Certainly the fourth one's starting to take a strong focus. I promised myself 3 books of Bruges, and then I have to do something else because I have traveled beyond this city. I mean, I'm from Canada, if nothing else, so I could put out a book of my grandpa's place if I wanted to. But I'm playing with ideas right now. One of the ideas I have is revisiting a book I wrote in 2009 when I was on one of my trips to India that has absolutely no photos. It was just talking about perception, looking, and a little bit of momentum, taking the initiative in photography. The other things I'm looking at, though, is the fact that I've traveled around a fair bit. I'm starting to realize beyond the tour that I'm pretty okay typing down words and connecting them with photos. So I'm also tempted to put out another like photographic book in the way where the photos dominate. And that would probably be India because I've been there 6 times for over a year and a half collectively. And it is Christmas every day there for photography, much less holy or something wonderful. Yeah.
Awesome. Right. I want to finish with a new thing, a quick fire round, which I've completely stolen off of my friend Steve Brazel's podcast. In fact, Steve, if you're listening to this, I'm very sorry. Anyway, I thought it was an awesome idea. Okay, quick fire round.
Yeah.
Favorite lens for reflections?
A wide angle, usually full frame. Let's go with 20 millimeters. Something where I can really get low, but still get the surroundings.
Awesome. Sunrise or sunset?
Oh, that's a good one. I love sunrise, but that's mainly because I have trouble getting up early in the morning. So photographically, I lean to sunsets. Also, having done enough night tours, I've picked up a ton of tricks on night photography, so that interests. But if I could get over my bad sleeping habits, I would say sunrise. Yeah, it's the most beautiful. World's waiting to wake up.
Color or black and white?
Oh, you bastard! How dare you make me choose? Can I go with selective color where the boy holds a red rose and anything?
No. The color prop thing. Oh my God, that's so 1994 or something.
There's your hate comments. There they are.
Oh my God.
No, I am going to say, oh, that's a really tough one. But you know what? Just because I'm at that point of like trying to push myself, challenge myself. I mean, nowadays portraits, I'm trying to nail them right into the spot of symmetry or joy. So I'm gonna say color because color's more challenging. You got to keep it simple. You got to think more. There's all these dynamics that I think black and white can make a little bit easier fundamentally.
Yeah.
So for the challenge, color.
Cool. Now here's a difficult one. This is gonna be a difficult one, especially in a place like Bruges.
Yeah.
Coffee or beer in Bruges?
Oh, that is also a good challenge one. Well, the tourist board will be happy to remind everyone that we do produce some of the best beer in the world, and I would certainly put West Fleetrin or Enfant Terrible, or locally in Bruges, the Gara, Garre, tiny little cafe. They only serve you free. They're so good. Best beer in Bruges. So beer, I could certainly claim love on, but I'm hyper, so I actually have to watch my beer intake. I can't drink too much. Or sugar sets me off and I become the life of the party, the guy dancing on the table with the lamp. I'm gonna have to go with coffee also because I say screw my hyperactivity and always drink too much coffee. So coffee. I'll go with coffee. I'll miss my beer dearly, but yeah, coffee if I had to choose.
What is the one thing that tourists always miss when photographing Bruges?
Huh. That is a really good question because we do try to provide a photo tour Bruges for every photographic opportunity you might need. I had to get my plug in there. What do they miss? Well, I'm gonna say too many miss Bruges at night because out of the 8 million that visit here every year, only 12 to 15% stay overnight. And that's not working for the tourist board. This place is stunning at night. The crowds go away. The monuments light up. If you want to talk photography, why do you think I do a night tour? And then if you've taken your photos, then you go eat some of the best beer and food in the world. Drink some of the best beer. Eat the best food. That's what they do here. So nighttime, I think, is very underserved in the city. But if I was to pick a location, I think a lot of those people who do the day visits, even with research, don't realize how 2/3 of the place is not mass tourism. Even I get a fair few of my guests are overnighters, and they don't always get to the windmills. So I'm going to say the windmills, where the quieter area town is. Go to the windmills. Say hi. You can wave at my place from there.
Are there any locations in Bruges that are completely overshot? I'm thinking, when I think of London, for example, there's certain shots you come across all the time, and I don't know I mean, there's certain angles. I don't know how many times I've seen them in like photo competitions
Yeah.
or on Instagram or wherever, where I just think, oh my God, not again. Are there any
Yeah.
specific locations in Bruges that have been completely rinsed dry when it comes to photography?
Yeah, I mean, mass tourism is going to have its effect at a certain point, and the secret is a little bit out of the bag about Bruges. We had a little longer than most before even secondary tourism really kicked in, or mass tourism really started getting big. So I'd say the Rosenhoodkai, the scenic view of Bruges, that's been pretty much covered. I think you can still find a few things on it, especially if you start stretching out your brain, which is part of why I did the book, by the way, was to stretch the left side of my brain in case it wasn't clear. Everybody looks at the landscape, the beautiful canal, the buildings, the market in the background. They don't look down and see boat life. They don't look over and see tourist life. They don't look over and see local life. So I think there's still some potential to those. But even having said that, I think they've been rinsed pretty dry on the Rosenhood. Then you could talk about some of the city center spots like the Bonifacius Bridge, especially during the day when there's masses on there. Smallest, prettiest bridge in Bruges, one of our bridges of love kind of thing. That gets a little bit busy. But I mean, even on tour, and this isn't a plug, but I can show you how you can work that to your advantage. You get into street photography, you go wide, you get the monument and diminish the crowds, that kind of thing. So I hesitate to say they're all done and dusted. But some of the city sites, they benefited from that breather over COVID to just lessen down the crowds and let the space recover a little bit for the energy on that.
So, what you mentioned before, I call that the Lake Louise effect. I think Dave Williams calls it the Eiffel Tower effect. It's basically, where everybody takes the same shot from the same angle. It's like Lake Louise, you walk up to the lake, it's exactly the same angle, and everybody takes the same shot, and you've seen it a million times on a million postcards.
Yeah.
And that's always, I always find like it's so super important to look around, as you say, and find other angles and other opportunities, basically.
That's what I think the biggest challenge in photography is. And this isn't a plug for the book in the least. That's part of why I did the book, was to not only for myself explore these alternate angles through the reflections, but also show it to the world. My most of the feedback I've gotten back on the sales or potential side of this is they'll probably do well with my mailing list, but the locals will probably love it for the fact that it's just such a different view on the city. And that, I mean, man, there are times where I'm not taking photos anymore, Bruges or beyond, because it's just so obvious. It doesn't do anything for me, and why would I bother then? If I showed you my photo of the Taj Mahal from India, a third of the frame is the Taj is on a vertical, and then 2/3 is the surrounding, quite relatively modest and poor Indian city of Agra around it. That's the kind of photo that's going to tickle my boat more than the ones that I got right at the Taj, 6 a.m., beautiful sunrise, ahead of the crowds and everything else. It's all been done. So I'm looking for that 2-floor cafe that lets me see some freaky angle. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Um, so, where can people find your book and more information?
Oh, absolutely. Well, the link for the book is, I'm sure, going to be in the description. You can check out my work generally through andymcsweeney.com. Freshly rebooted this year with almost 800 images of my work and a couple of my photo tips, bits and bobs. Or the project is going to be hosted on my Photo Tour Bruges page, which is phototourbruges.com/projects/reflections. So that'll be a link in the book. And for what it's worth, for anyone who wants to check it out without having to plop out a copy, once I get all the promo up and going around the beginning of November properly, There will be a nice big free sample since it's a 175-page book. I'm either going to give you the entire first chapter, or I'm going to give you 10 to 15 pages of each chapter so you can dig in and get a good feel for yourself anyways.
Fantastic. Andy, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show again. As always, thank you so much for being the guest on this week's ChemShake podcast.
Oh, Kirsten, the honor was mine. Thank you for having me, man. You do a great show. Keep it up.
Okay, folks, that is it for today. What an absolute pleasure having Andy McSweeney back on the show. His ability to find beauty in reflections, patience in process, and meaning in the smallest details is a masterclass in seeing differently. And as always, before we go, let me just recommend another episode that I think you'll love. Check out episode 274, Inside the Retouching Revolution with Lisa Carney. I'm sure you love it. And if you enjoy our content, consider supporting us on buymeacoffee.com/CameraShake. It really does mean the world to us and helps us keep creating more exciting episodes for you. And don't forget, head over to www.camerashakepodcast.com and sign up to the mailing list over there. We've got some incredible stuff coming up very soon, so you'll know about it first. And for those of you listening to the audio version, did you know that there's a fully fledged video version over on YouTube with plenty of examples of Andy's reflections of Bruges photography in full Technicolor? Well, you should by now because I keep mentioning it all the time. Just search for CameraShake Podcasts on YouTube and you can watch all past episodes on there. So if you're already on YouTube, drop us a comment, hit the like button, ring the bell, and share with your friends. Your engagement helps us reach a wider audience all over the world. That's really quite important because, that's what it's all about. So as always, keep shaking up the world of photography, and I'll see you next Thursday.